Hello and welcome to the strangest gig I've ever played, True Tales from the studio and the stage. I am your host, Chris J Norwood. I'm very excited about our podcast today because joining us is comedian Paul Varghese. Paul is a very, very funny comedian. He's been doing this thing here in Dallas for 20 years. And I had a really awesome time talking with him, getting to hear about what it's like on the comedy side of strange gigs. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Yes, welcome back to the strangest gig. I'm really glad you're here. And I just want to take the time to say thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed these podcasts, it would be really awesome if you would help spread the word. Tell your friends about it. If you've got a musician or a comedian or any other performer in your life that you think would get a kick out of these stories, yeah, send them a text, send them your favorite episode, help spread the good word. If you are a musician or a comedian and you've got a pretty awesome strange gig story, hit me up. Let's get you on the podcast. We'd love to hear it. This podcast is truly a labor of love for me. It's a one-man show. I do all the booking, the recording, the editing, the posting, all of it. And so I really appreciate you listening. We've got a lot of really cool ideas, some live shows I'd love to do, some video stuff I'd love to do with this podcast. And I'd love to be able to book some more and bigger guests. But to be able to do that, I need some more listeners. So again, thank you for listening and help spread the word. As I said, comedian Paul Varghese is my guest this episode. I love comedy. I love the art and the craft of it. I love watching it. And I'm fascinated by the process. And so I'm really excited that Paul is our guest. I had a lot of fun getting to talk with him and hear the ins and outs of that side of the game. And I think you'll dig it too. So here he is, Paul Varghese. Paul Varghese, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Awesome.
I really appreciate it. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah. You're my first comedian.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
My first non-music related person.
Okay.
So I'm super excited to have you here.
Okay.
So let's get in. Tell me about your current gig, what you're working on currently, and we'll go from there.
So I've been doing stand for about over 20 years, 24 years, I think, 24. I just taped a special at Dallas Comedy Club in April, and it comes out October, November. I'm just going to drop it on YouTube. I was thinking about shopping it, but I don't really care to shop it.
What's that process like, shopping a special?
So Amazon right now buys specials.
Okay.
Because they're trying to compete with
Netflix.
And Netflix has to do their own. So Netflix has to have their own production people coming in if you're going to do it.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they tend to only book comedians who are already selling out theaters at that point. Mm-hmm. They're not really pushing up and comers for the most part.
Yeah.
With Amazon, it's like I feel like it would just kind of get lost on it. I mean, it's going to get lost on YouTube too, but it's
but there's always that chance there's more chance for virality.
Yeah, whatever that word is on YouTube. Yeah, because Amazon's like there's almost too much content. I mean, you have to really go searching, and unless you're on the front page of Amazon, who's going to go digging through Amazon to go find your special? So, so I'm just going to drop it on YouTube in October. I'm really proud of it. It came out really well. So
I watched your last one, the one that came out in 2022.
Yeah,
that one was really awesome.
What's weird about that is I was their first one they ever taped.
Oh, really?
And I was the last one they dropped. And I taped an hour, and we did 2 shows, and they ended up using the shorter set, which I'm fine with. But for months, I was like, I'm gonna get my hour out there.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't there, so for whatever reason. So this one is like all the stuff that I didn't get to put on there.
Oh, cool.
Mixed with the stuff in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun. We'll see if it does anything. I'm trying to brace myself for the fact that it won't go viral. You know, that kind of thing. I have to brace for that because when the last one came out, I was like, okay, this is it. This is my baby. And then got 18,000 views. I was like, man, nothing. So
which isn't something to sniff at.
But it's not what you mean. Everybody goes in with but also everybody has specials now. It's almost special to not have a special. You know what I mean? Like everyone has it. Like the guy 1 year into stand up has one. So it's been kind of it's kind of been I don't know what the word is, but it's devalued, I guess maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, tell me how does the monetization on, or are you not even worried about that on YouTube?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I think on YouTube it used to be I think it was 500,000 views or 1 million views,
shit.
but I think 5 million is the new 1 million or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very stupid. I mean, you really have to go. I mean, there's a lot of people that are buying views and stuff. I mean, it's all it's all really phony now. Like when it used to go, like when I started in 01, the first comic that went viral that I remember, it was in 04, and that was like organically. I don't think even, I mean, they didn't give you money for going viral back then. It just, now you can actually pay your way for views, which is kind of cheapens the whole thing. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a lottery ticket at this point when you're doing it. It's just, I needed to put it out there so I have something that like I can move on and just start writing other stuff.
Right.
You know? And plus I'm proud of it, you know?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I'm not like, you know, there was no deadline for it, you know? So we'll see what happens. We'll see.
There's a similar like phenomenon going on in the music business where you get like these young TikTok kids that have like billions of spins on Spotify.
Yeah.
But they couldn't draw 50 people at any city in the country.
Yeah. It's you know, to me, you know, they say there's a comedy boom. I don't think there's really a boom. I think there's more comics out there, and there's kind of like, I don't want to say scamming. Scamming might be too hard a harsh a word, but it's like, you have people who have like, you know, 400,000 followers on Instagram, and their jokes suck, and they're not pulling people into audiences. I mean, they're not pulling it. You know, it rarely translates. You know, so to me, it just kind of like makes guys who really bust their ass just kind of get lost in the mix.
Yeah,
you know, which
I mean, guys who like really take the time and craft something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's the same thing with music. You know,
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, I was, you know, it took a long time for me to understand it because, like, you know, when I was growing up in like the 90s and 80s, like my favorite hip hop groups were not the ones that were super successful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean they were bad, but you know, they're not as big as Drake, but I don't like Drake.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
with stand-up, stand-up is like, because I consider it an art. Most comics don't consider it an art. I consider it, it's a creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
But I think most people just look at it as like, well, if you're not selling tickets, then you suck. I'm like, I don't see the correlation with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so many great comics who aren't huge.
Sure.
You know, and most of the really famous ones aren't good either. And that's not me hating on them because they're famous. They're just not good.
Yeah.
You know, but they'll argue that it's ticket sales. You know, we've like, you know, commercialized art so much to where it's all ticket sales and views. It's not like, oh, you just like what you're doing and you're good at what you do.
Right.
You know? So this city's been really great to me because, I mean, they've seen me since I started. So if you've seen any stand-up show in the last 23 years, at some point, it was probably me, or an open mic, I was probably there at some point. Yeah. And this city's been super, and this city's not known for being supportive of local art. You know what I mean? And like, they're pretty shitty for a lot of, especially for music. I mean, I've seen it, you know?
Yeah. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. And like, it's one of the conversations I've had with almost every musician I've had on the podcast.
Yeah.
There's been, like you said, Dallas, for whatever reason, is this city that just does not support local artists.
Think from the outside perspective, I think it's because the city's transient. It's like most people are here for work. They're not really tied into Dallas. Like, I'm born and raised here, but most people move here for work. Sure. You know, and so there's no real, that's the one thing they always knock on Dallas. It doesn't really have a culture, because it doesn't, because most people move here. We take all the best things from your city and put it in our city.
Put it in Dallas, yeah.
Yeah, there's no real Dallas thing.
Whatever culture we do have, we tear it down.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's why there's no real like defining you know, art scene. Because you go to Austin or Houston, I mean, they support them like crazy. Yeah. You know? And so even here locally, like, they didn't cover comics for the longest time until a comic decided to do like a stunt journalism piece and like, what's it like to be a comic? And for like, she like hung out with all of us for like a few months and did open mics. And that's the only time we had article stuff written about comics. Yeah. You know, and then
was it like the Morning News or the Observer?
It was the Observer. Yeah. And this is back in 06. And so the comics were like, oh, we were finally getting press, because we all thought we were really good. And we were just kind of speaking to no one, you know? Sure. Stand-up is more popular now than ever before. So there's so many comics here. I mean, when I started, there were probably, I would say maybe 30 comics. Yeah. And now there's probably 200, 300. There's like 9 clubs in DFW, which is cool. But I mean, they're probably half of them will probably shut down in a year. But you know, once the boom sucks, you know, it dries up. But it's cool. I mean, the city's been great for me, but I can see how it's fickle to a lot of, you know, I mean, they should be getting, I mean, not that papers really matter, but you know what I mean? Like, so, especially as an artist, you want something, just be able to say like, hey, this is like, hey, I made it this far. There's those little milestones that they don't really, you know, online doesn't really count to me. Like, if somebody writes a blog about you, it doesn't really count. I want to see like in the paper. I want to like.
It's cool. Yeah. I love that. Well, and it's something else I was going to ask is, you know, at least on the music end of things, since COVID, like, there hasn't been this bounce back with people going out to shows anymore. Like, are you seeing that in the comedy world as well? Or
initially, it's all the shows for the most part. I mean, there's so many clubs here. So
yeah.
Initially we saw it, but I don't know how it is for you guys, but like I think people are just more comfortable staying home because
like
there's so many. It's just easier. Like a lot of my friends since COVID, not a lot of them, but the circle of friends that I had got chopped in half because most people just don't go out anymore.
Yeah.
Like they can get everything delivered. They can watch everything on their phone.
Yeah.
So why would they? And so their social skills suck. They don't go. I still go out, and I feel weird, being a guy in his 40s going out because people look at me like I'm crazy. But I'm like, I thought that's what you do.
That's what you do. You go out and
Yeah, you walk. I mean, that's why this neighborhood's so awesome. You walk around. It just feels like you're in a city. You're part of like a community.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't understand my friends who just living in. I mean, I live in the suburbs, but I see it in the suburbs. Just people just kind of like in this little bubble and not leaving. Stand up to me, like I think people will pay for like the big acts.
Yeah.
But yeah, locally, I haven't noticed it personally, but I know why they're staying home,
Right.
So I get it,
Do you think the time of comics selling out stadiums is over, or is that?
I think there's more comics selling out arenas than ever before now. There is. I don't think they're great. And I'm still shocked by that it, I mean, this with music, you're surprised what connects and what doesn't.
Right.
Probably like the song that you love the most is the one that nobody gave a shit about.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? And the one you're like, you just threw it together. You're like, what the fuck? You guys like this shit? Yeah. It's like, I mean, that's how I am even with just my jokes, but like, there's a bubble. At some point it has to pop.
Right.
I don't see it popping anytime soon though. I mean, there's more comics doing theaters than I've ever seen. I mean, it's selling out the Majestic left and right. I'm like, how is that even, how are 3,000 people coming to see you? I don't understand. And a lot of it's based off the phone. I mean, it's the ultimate marketing for a lot of these guys, but like, I don't know, I'm so old school with it, like I'm just like pen to paper and, you just kind of grind through it. That's what I'm used to, It's like the phone is just, I mean, I put stuff on there obviously, but I'm not like on there all the time. I'm not posting 5 times a day of videos because it feels disposable. At a certain point, you just kind of feel like jokes aren't easy to write. Good jokes aren't easy to write. And if I'm just throwing them out there like, oh, this is so easy, to me, it just cheapens the whole thing.
Do you find that like you kind of second guess yourself? Like if you have a good joke in your mind, you're like, I want to save this for a set. I don't want to just throw this out there.
I mean, I don't care about it. To me, it's like, I know I'm good enough to write more stuff,
Okay.
But I also, for me personally, I try to write jokes that are like evergreen. So like, if people like it, like they want to come see it. And that's the thing about comics. Sometimes I hate that when comics say like they don't want to put their jokes out because in case it blows up, then I can't do it at the show. I'm like, no, they came because of that joke,
right?
Which means they kind of want to see the joke.
Yeah,
it's
like the musicians playing their hits.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can do that with jokes. Some comics always say you can't do that, but I think you can. I mean, I've worked with comics who like, the audience likes their act, and then when they go into their tried and true thing, they all start cheering, and it's like. But on the flip side, like you have the comics that are all doing crowd work. I mean, you see it on Instagram Reels. It's just them talking to the crowd because they don't want to burn their material. But I've seen those comics live, and they do the same shit. They're still talking to the crowd. They're not holding on to this hour that's incredible because it's hard to write a good hour. And
I would imagine even their crowd work, some of that gets recycled.
There's maybe a handful of guys or comics that are really good at it, that are like genuinely like. Are able to engage and call things back. Most of it is just people making fun of other people. You're just making fun of this dude and making fun of this dude and making fun of their relationship. And I'm like, dude, if you knew what that comic's relationship is at their house, you wouldn't feel so bad because they're just shitty. They're just as shitty as a person. But I've just never been, unless I'm tipsy. Disclaimer: I've never been the guy to like shit on the crowd. Yeah, like they paid money.
Yeah,
like they're, if anything, like they deserve a show, know? So, yeah.
Talk about how you got your start in comedy.
I mean, it was pretty simple. I just started. I took a workshop in the Improv in February 2001, and then, so I'd always watched stand up in high school and college. I really watched it, as dumb as this sounds, to like. Find like an Indian dude doing stand up because my parents were born and raised over there. They moved over here. I never saw like my kind on TV.
Sure.
And I just kind of wanted to hear like even just like the closest we had was like Margaret's show, and that wasn't even like my experience, how I envisioned it, right? So I just would watch stand up all the time, hoping to see it, and never saw it. And I was like, I went to go see George Lopez at the Improv, and I saw this flyer for it. Dean Lewis, who still teaches it. And I went and took it, and at the end it says like you get to perform on the Improv stage. So I was like, okay, it's $400. I'm paying $400 basically to go on stage at the Improv, and then I'll just go back to I used to work at Tower Records. I'll just go back there and sell music.
Yeah, cool.
That's what I'll do. And it went really well, and they just started asking me back, and it took me about a couple of years to realize, oh, okay, I might be able to like actually carve out a little living doing it, you know?
Yeah.
But it was never like I wasn't the funny kid growing up. I wasn't popular. I wasn't social at all. Mm-hmm. I just did it because I didn't see anybody doing it, anybody that looked like me doing it. And in hindsight, I was like the only guy in the country, only Indian kid in the country doing it, from what I know back in 01. Right. I mean, now it's a lot bigger, but back then, if you don't see yourself, it's like, and you don't sit there and think like I'm not thinking about like I'm checking off boxes, I'm a groundbreaker, I'm just like, I don't know, I just want to hear I just want to put my experience out there. Mm-hmm. And this city loved it. They've supported me like crazy.
That's
awesome. They connect with me on all that stuff. I never get, you would think in Texas you're going to get like, racist heckles and all that stuff. It's so, I can count on one hand how many times those things have happened.
That's great.
The city, Dallas is super diverse. It gets a bad rep.
Has that been your experience at other cities across the South?
Not really. I mean, maybe small towns, they just don't know any better. But a lot of times if you're good, they won't heckle you. They heckle you because you suck. They're not heckling guys who are killing. If everybody's laughing, and especially if you write smart shit.
Yeah.
I like to think I write smart shit. If you do smart shit, they're kind of intimidated to say anything. Like anytime I've been heckled, I deserved it. I was probably too tipsy and was forgetting my jokes or repeating jokes, I deserved it. But it's rare that you ever get somebody, you're killing and then somebody's like, you suck.
Right.
So you kind of bring on the hecklers yourself, Yeah. So.
What was it like opening for Joan Rivers? I mean, she's as old school as it
she's
gets.
Awesome, man. Like I that's one of those what ifs. Like had she not passed, where would me and her have been? You know what I mean? Because that's the only reason we quit working together. Is because like a week before our show in New Jersey, she fell into that coma. She had that coma and then died a week later. But
so you were kind of her guy for that year, right?
Yeah, I met her in May of that year, and then we did 4. Normally, if you go on tour with somebody, you assume like, okay, I'll get one chance and that's it. But she kept bringing me with her, so it was like it would have been our 5th show together had we done it. And she wanted a clean opener. That's what she wanted. It's to be completely clean. So she's even more shocking because she's easily. I mean, I was 13 years into stand-up at that point. She's easily, and even now to this day, she's the most offensive comic I've ever seen. And then anytime any comic says like, they're all scared of me and they'll cancel me, it's not even close. The stuff that she said up there, like if somebody had live tweeted it or posted it, they would have crucified her, dude. She opens.
Then you think?
Huh?
Even then you think? Even in 2014?
Yeah. I mean, it's still offensive today. I mean, she opens. I'm not going to say exactly what she says, but she opens. She goes, "Let's get this out the way," and she goes through every racial homophobic slur, every single one that you can think of, all of them, the new ones, the old ones.
Yeah.
She just goes down the list, and then at the very end, then she takes a bow, and the place goes crazy, and then she goes into her act.
Yeah.
And no comic who talks about being edgy would ever do that.
Right.
Ever. And she just doesn't care. She was really nice to me, really sweet to me, but I've seen her be an asshole to people. But she kind of like earned it. I mean, was one of the only women doing it, and
certainly in the 60s. Yeah.
She's tiny. She's got she's like maybe 4'11", or she's tiny, and people kind of shit on her. So, for me, I've had a lot of shit happen to me too, and I just process it differently. I'm not going to judge her for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was doing edgy shit in the 60s, dude. People don't even do it now, and she was doing it. So, but she was always really, really sweet to me. So, it's weird. I never thought I'd be opening for her. And that's the one thing that's cool about being in Texas, why I'm so biased to this city, is I get those opportunities. If I was in LA or New York, I would have never met Joan Rivers to go on tour with her. It's the fact that she needed somebody in Austin, and she looked me up and liked me and took me around. That wouldn't have happened in LA or New York. I would have just been lost amongst all those. So a lot of the cool things I got are because I'm here and because, opportunities are few and far between kind of thing. Yeah. So
do you talk about cancel culture with other comics, or are you just kind of tired of talking about the whole thing?
Yeah, I think it obviously happened to a couple of comics, but I'm such a comedy nerd. Like, I don't understand. If you're gonna say something edgy, freedom of speech doesn't mean like freedom from consequence. Like you can't say something. I mean, I've worked with comics who say really offensive stuff, and then the audience will like heckle them back, and then they get mad at the audience for getting mad at them. I'm like, but you said that to get a rise out of the audience.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, like when you hang out with them off stage, they're not that person. They're quiet, they're timid. It reminds me of the kid just trying to be the tough, cool guy. Because a lot of comics have that insecure kind of, they want to look like the cool person. And that's how they know how to do it. But they're complete wusses off stage. You know what I mean? It's rare that you meet somebody who's consistent with who
their
they
persona.
are. Yeah. And that's always been a thing for me. I was like, if I'm going to do it, I don't want to have to turn it on. Like if me and you went to an open mic right now, I don't want to have to sit there and go over my notes. I know what I'm going to do, and I'm there, and I don't have to turn on and psych myself up. And that's what I like. Those are the comics that I like. But you know, anybody who's complaining about cancel culture, they're saying it because they want like engagement on social media.
They want the clicks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is. They don't mean it. They don't mean any of that stuff. So.
Sure.
I've had plenty of terrible shows, and I've said plenty of offensive things, but like I said it, so like I have to live with it. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not looking to get canceled, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I think there's a difference between vulgarity and like saying something like offensive on purpose to get a rise.
I think there's a difference between I think a lot of comics don't know the difference between getting a laugh and getting a reaction. I think they think a reaction is a laugh, and it's not. But I don't think audiences even care either. I don't think they even know either. Anybody can say anything to get a reaction. It's really easy to get a reaction. Super easy. It's super hard to get to get like a gut laugh from something that they've never heard before. You know. Yeah. So, and again, watching like Joan Rivers' closing joke. I can say this. It's offensive, but it's not dirty. But the running thread throughout her whole set when she was doing it was, she'll mention a celebrity and she'll always say, "Oh, you know, I was hanging out with George Clooney, good friend of mine." She'll just keep saying it. Also, by the end of it, she's like, "I was hanging out with Whitney Houston, good friend of mine." Everybody, she goes, "I remember Whitney's last words," and she takes she has a bottle of water and she pours it in her mouth and just like spits it out like she's choking in the bathtub, and then she drops it and goes, "Thank you, good night," and like. That would have been easily cancelable. Whitney's fans would have been so pissed about that shit. But I've seen offensive stuff. Like, that's offensive. I can see that. I don't see any shock comedian now that I've seen. They're not even close to what she's doing. They don't have the balls to say that kind of stuff. They know the words that can piss people off, but that's like a really good joke, what she did. You know what I mean?
It's well crafted.
Yeah. It's smart. Whatever. It's just... And it hits to like an emotional core. You're not just saying something to shock people. She really wants to like punch you in the gut with stuff like that, you know? So one of the things that, you know, again, talking about how offensive she was, like her audience is mostly gay men and old Jewish people. That's basically her audience. And I mean, she'll say every homophobic story at the beginning. She'll always make fun of them. And then she starts to there's a lot of people in the front row that are in like those motorized wheelchairs, like those kind of Stephen Hawking kind of chairs. Yeah. And she says the thing in the middle. She goes, "If you're crippled, roll your ass out of here!" Like screaming at him, and she does like 5 minutes on like how her husband was in a wheelchair and she had to wheel him around the apartment or the house all the time, and it looked like a Tony Hawk skate park in there or something like that. And she's screaming she keeps calling them their crippled asses, you losers, all this stuff, and they are laughing their ass off, dude. Yeah. If you were just to record that and not see the audience, you would be like, why is she just, you know what I mean? I mean, that's ultimate cancel stuff. Yeah. Like I said, there's a reason those things aren't on air. I mean, there's, you know, who's going to air that? Right. You know? So, and especially at her age, she would have been wiped off, you know? So I'm never impressed by the shock comics. It doesn't, because I've seen it. So, you know.
Well, what was it like opening for Dave Chapelle? He's somebody that has certainly he's almost gotten canceled, but he's...
Yeah, I mean, he definitely shifted. Well, you know, there's a comic named Chad Daniels. He always says, like, people don't get canceled. They just get a different audience. Yeah. You know, because there's an audience that loves people who got canceled, quote unquote, you know? Right. It actually helps most people's careers. I only met him a couple of times. We didn't really talk a whole lot. But he wasn't really working on material. Like, if you look up like the reviews for those shows, we did Dallas and Austin. He was just talking to the crowd for an hour. He was just smoking a box of spirits and just talking to the crowd. And people at that level, like Chapelle and Rivers, like people just can't believe they're in the same room as that person. Like it's a different level of fame. It's like I've never seen anything like it. And I've worked with some pretty big names, but that's like they're like iconic names, whether you like them or not.
Right.
People are just like staring at them, like they're not. They can't. Whatever they say, they're gonna laugh their ass off. But if
people come ready to laugh.
If I was to watch objectively, like, and I'm watching just as a comic watching a comic, it wasn't a good show. Doesn't mean he sucks, but he was just smoking and talking about like, hey, where's the after party? He just spent like an hour just talking about, whatever. There was no jokes there, and because he wasn't working on an hour or anything. I think what I remember his road manager telling me at the time was, who knows if I'm supposed to say this, but he said something like, because we were sitting at the after party for Dallas, and I was like, so were you guys on tour? What are you guys doing? He's like, nah, like, Dave's team is like, Dave hasn't been performing for a while, and, we could use the money. Can you just go book a show?
Yeah.
Because he sells it out in 10 minutes. And you forget that, like, he's got publicists and attorneys.
He's got a team, yeah.
Yeah, so if he's not performing for 6-7 years, like, hey, can we just get, like, 30,000? And so you forget, like, that's what it felt like. I mean, he just was doing a favor for his friends.
He's got people counting on him to pay the bills.
And that stress has got to be crazy.
Oh,
I can't, like, why am I responsible for these people I'm not related to?
Yeah.
It's hard enough with family. Now you got, like, people who are really only your friends because you give them money.
Right.
So I don't envy that level of fame. I mean, I would love sold out theaters, but
sure. But the responsibility and the headaches that come with it.
Yeah. But this being a musician, like it's you have to have an agent to get work, but it does kind of feel shitty that like somebody who has no musical talent is just kind of reaping the benefits of all the stuff that you know what I mean?
Sure.
So
do you have an agent? How does that work on the comedy end? Like, do you have...
I don't have one. I used to have a college agent, and but comedy wise, like, again, this city's been so good to me. Like, my rep is really good in the city, so I get recommended for stuff left and right.
Okay, yeah.
I've been doing it long enough to where, I mean, that's why like I'm so nerdy and diligent about it, because like if I suck, like every show to me feels like an audition basically, and maybe that's unfair pressure I put on myself, but I'm good like that. It works out for me like that. But
for sure.
I've never had an agent. I've had a couple people try to manage me, but those were all manage. You don't really need a comedy manager in Dallas.
Sure, yeah.
You can handle those connections on your own, but.
You built up the relationships yourself. There's no
and the other thing is like with comedy agents in general. I mean, if you want to get to like Netflix and stuff, they're not going to just take my phone call. At that point, you need somebody talking on your behalf. But if I can carve out like a career not dealing with an agent, that would be awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's to me winning. That's winning right there.
For sure.
So.
Well, let's tell me now about your strangest gig. Okay. And that can mean, whatever that means to you. If you have more than one, we can talk about them all.
I got a couple. So I used to do colleges a bunch, and most college shows are basically for people to not leave campus, like freshmen or sophomores. It's on like a Friday or Saturday night, and they just want people to not go out and drink.
Gotcha.
But all the cool people are gone drinking, so you're stuck with like the freshmen who don't have cars, right? Illinois State University, easily worst show ever. Illinois State University. It was a Friday night. They did basically a lock-in. It was in a gymnasium.
Oh, fun.
Now, people say like college kids are dumb. Like, I don't say they're dumb, but freshmen they're still high school mentality. Dude.
Yeah.
And you forget how small, like colleges are not like, a lot of these colleges are in small towns, man. So this is like, people live like an hour away and stuff. It's just very small town mentality. So they're not bright. Like that, this is the first comedy show they've ever seen, most likely. So all the kids are in their like pajama pants and all this stuff. We're in a gymnasium, so like the acoustics are already shitty.
Right? Yeah, you're hearing yourself bounce back at you. And...
so I go up there. I'm the second guy that goes up, and because it's echoing, and again, their frame of reference, they're 18 years old, so their frame of reference is nothing. They probably have never been on a date, probably never been, like all the things that I've like. So I had to learn, like I can't talk about dating or shit like that because they don't know it.
Yeah.
They're 18. They don't know anything.
They have no frame of reference.
Yeah. And you don't want to talk down to them like you're older than them. So you're just kind of just, whatever. But they'll just yell out stuff like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Like they'll just say stuff like that because they don't know any better. Like they're 18-year-old kids. So I'm like trying to punch my way through it. You can't cuss. They don't want you to cuss.
Sure.
It's whatever. So you're sitting there just trying to go through all this stuff. And then this kid walks out. I mean, this kid just walks out. And he comes back with this big like stuffed animal.
Oh.
And these kids are just like, I'm up here telling jokes, and there's where'd you get the bear? They learn how to joke. While I'm like, and he goes, oh, there's a Build-A-Bear next door, and like half of them all just left. And I'm still up here. I've got like another 30 minutes. I'm okay. So here, like 10 minutes later, here come all these kids with, I mean, just like 18, like kids, like just like adults at the age of an adult, just all holding bears. And so I'm still going through it. It's just, they're still like, we don't get it. I'm just punching through, and I just got off. It was like pointless. At this point, it's like,
just end
it. So then I get off stage, and then I get a call the next day from my college agent. She goes, yeah, Illinois State wants their money back because you didn't do the entire 45 minutes. I'm like, they're not listening.
Yeah.
They're holding. They left to go to a Build-A-Bear workshop. She was like, well, they didn't tell me that. I'm like, you should have still done the 45. I'm like, how? Like, what am I doing there? They're not listening. They're all playing with their bear. Like, why even have a comic at that point? You know what I mean? I mean, she was lucky. I ended up getting half of the money.
Yeah.
And not the whole thing. But the fact that they don't, and there's adults. There's adults in charge of, like, people in my age who are in charge of these people. How do they not feel bad for me and be like, oh, this is awful? But, that was easily the worst gig.
They went and got their stuffies and went home.
Yeah. But then the coolest moment, I would say, I guess it's strange, but I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So, Tom Wilson played Biff Tannen on Back to the Future. So he used to do stand-up for a long time. He still kind of does it, whatever. And I had met him years ago. I opened for him years ago, and he was really nice dude. So the Improv used to do, and Addison used to do 3 shows on Saturdays, like 7, 9, 11. Most comics don't want to do the 11 o'clock show because it's rowdy, everybody's drunk and whatever. Yeah. So he's there that weekend. This is a couple years after I'd already met him. I'm doing the 11 o'clock show, and he's back there just eating whatever. And so I just go do the 11 o'clock show, and this guy's sitting in the front row with his girlfriend. He's not laughing at anything, and I'm in a shitty mood. I'm a little tipsy, so I just start lighting into this dude. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have let into him. Lighting into him. He's sitting arms crossed, and
what's his girlfriend doing? Like she's
sitting right next to him, and she's smiling. And then at one point, he gets up and walks out, and I'm being such an asshole. I'm like cussing him out. I don't know what came over me, whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, why don't you go with them? And she's like, well, I came to see you, right? And blah blah. She's saying a lot, place is cheering, whatever. And then Tom Wilson comes from the back and sits in the empty chair. Okay? So he's huge. He's probably 6'4", 6'5". He's a big dude, and you can't really tell who he is. They don't know who he is, and who knows that Biff Tannen even does stand up, right?
Right. Yeah.
And why would you expect to see him in Addison of all places? So,
sure.
Or they see a big dude come and sit down, so everybody starts cheering because they just saw some guy replace the boyfriend. Are cheering, and then he gets up and he turns around and looks at him. He goes, why don't y'all make like a tree and get out of here? He does it. And for like a split second before they cheer, this one guy goes, oh my God, it's Biff. And then the place went bananas. He bowed and then just left, just walked back into the dark. And then they started handing shots, and I blacked out. I don't remember what I said after that, but in my head the next morning when I came to, I was like, that really happened, right? And my friend was like, yeah, that's got to be. Think how like drunk you got to be. Like the next day, be like, wait, was Biff Tannen? The guy from Back to the Future was.
Yeah, there were people over the city going, huh?
What? Yeah, a lot of people became sober probably after that night. 'Cause they were like, there's no way in hell. Why would Biff Tannen be at an Addison show? But that was
called
easily
some
the
guy at Butthead, and then that can't be real.
Yeah, exactly. There's no why would exactly. So that was the coolest heckle moment ever. I mean, because he nailed that perfectly. He didn't have to come do that.
Yeah.
He could have just. It was so awesome. I wonder if he remembers that. But
that's cool. Good for him for like seeing the opportunity and seizing it.
Yeah. It was like he's like it was cool. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about your dream gig. What does that look like for you? And that could be, venue, bill, whatever.
It used to be a late night set. I wanted a set on Letterman or The Tonight Show so bad because I just wanted my dad would watch this stuff, and I would love for my dad to see me. It would give a lot of credibility to what I do.
Yeah.
For there, but I auditioned for them, showcased for them. They didn't like anything I did, so I was kind of like, well, fuck them, But
yeah.
For me, it's weird how it changed because like I came in with no expectations. I mean, like I said, I wanted to be a brown guy. I wanted to tell my experience, so I never really had a template for what I wanted to do. For me, really, as dumb as it sounds, I just want to be able to sell shows out around the country. I want to be able to go to Chicago and not worry about are 200 people going to show up. That to me is like, because I'm at that point now, like, this being in music, like when you first start the first 5 years, everybody likes you because you're good. Yeah. And then it's like, can you move tickets? And that's when it doesn't become fun anymore, because you can't control that. If you could control that, everybody would be sold out shows everywhere. Right. And they appreciate your art when you start, and then about 10 years in, they're like, okay, but come on, man, you gotta move units. You know what I mean? And it takes the fun out of it, Sure. And that's really what I want, just so I don't have to worry about, how many people are going to show up to this, and that would be the dream thing for me. I mean, I've done enough big venues with, Joan Rivers and all those guys and all those comics to know what it feels like. Mm-hmm. I used to do House of Blues over here, the big room in House of Blues, and so I've felt those kind of moments. So none of that really bothers me. I just love the consistency of like, which hopefully this special does something to where, awesome. If it doesn't, whatever. So.
Well, tell me when the special comes out. When is it?
It's going to be, we haven't put a date on it yet, because I just have almost the second to final cut, basically. I got it last week. End of October, November, really pretty much whenever I want to do it. Okay, great. I just want to spend a couple of weeks like throwing clips up just to kind of tease it. Yeah. And then, again, I don't know the exact protocol for it, Sure. Like I don't know like what time I'm supposed to do it, what days. It changes, right? They said like, Friday at 2 a.m. I'm like, I don't, which, right. I don't want to worry about all this. I just kind of just want to just throw it out there. Put it out there, yeah. But, and I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself for it to get like, if it gets 30 views, I got to be cool with that. I can't just go crazy, So.
Well, how do you keep that pressure off of yourself?
I don't know. I wish I knew. Like for
me too. That's why I'm asking.
I know. I mean, I try to keep myself as distracted as possible. Yeah. You try to. For me, I've been doing it 23 years, so you try to like kind of wire into like why you do it. You do it because you love to do it, and if they don't see it, they don't see it. It's not a reflection of who you are as a person. And it helps a lot because there's a lot of terrible comics who are famous. So it kind of like, in my head, I'm kind of like, okay, well, if everybody likes that, I'm good.
I'll be all right.
Yeah, because when I started in 2001, the best comics were like Mitch Hedberg, Dave Attell, Greg Giraldo, like big names, Louis Black. They're still big names, but I was like, oh, I'm not as good as them. That's why they're famous. Yeah. And then you get good and you're like, how's that guy famous? Like, that's not good at all. So then it just kind of like, at that point, I'm like, especially like when I auditioned for Letterman and stuff, and I would see who got it over me. I'm like, hey, that dude got it? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. It doesn't have the same gravitas that it did before, because same thing with Comedy Central. I mean, I had auditioned so many times for them to get a special, and they kept shooting me down, and then I would watch every season. I'd be like, I wonder who got it. And then I was like, oh, this doesn't mean anything. Who cares? Yeah. So we'll see.
Well, where can people find you online?
Online on Instagram, it's Paul V, like my last name, comedian. And then Facebook, it's Paul and Oates. But if you just type in Paul Varghese, it pops up. You just type in, it's the first thing that pops up. So, and I post clips on Instagram, but I'm not annoying with the reels. I don't put, And then I do shows all the time around town. I mean, if you've been to any open mics or clubs down here, I'm always out. So, I have a show at the Kessler in October, which is, I think it's the 19th, October 19th at the Kessler. Which is an awesome venue. And so,
Awesome. Paul, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Appreciate it, man.
This is great. All right, there he goes. Y'all, please be sure to check out Paul, October 19th at the Kessler Theater. And then stay tuned with him. He performs all over town at different places. And be on the lookout for his comedy special coming out later this month or next month. It is sure to be hilarious. He is a funny man, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thanks so much, Paul. Again, thank you for listening to the Strangest Gig podcast. And once again, if you are a musician or a comedian or any other type of performer with your own strange gig story, hit me up. Let's get you on the show. Finally, I am your host, Chris J Norwood. And if you really like my band, The Knockdown Drogout, but think my voice is just mid, well, you're in luck. We just put out all the instrumentals to our debut album. You can check it out on Spotify. And, put it on while you're bopping around the house and doing some cleaning. It's some great mood music for you there, so please enjoy. And check us out at chrisjnorwood.com and all the socials at Chris J Norwood. And so until next time, if you find yourself on stage competing with the Build-A-Bear workshop, just remember, a gig's a gig, right?